Good morning. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Monica Westfall, and I have with me here today Israel Gamburd, and Israel is with Lifeway Mobility. Welcome, Israel.
Good morning, Monica.
So tell us a little bit about your company.
So we were Gamburd for about 19 years, and starting February 1st, we're part of a much bigger organization. It's called Lifeway Mobility.
Okay, so what does Lifeway Mobility have to offer?
So Lifeway Mobility started on the East Coast, and they are consolidating the industry. So when you look at home accessibility, there's never really been a segment called home accessibility. So, for example, like if you sold wheelchairs, then you would provide a ramp and sometime a grab bar. But home accessibility does a little more. They don't really focus on the wheelchair, but they focus on a ramp, a grab bar, maybe a lift to get you up and down the stairs, maybe a lift to get you in and out of bed. So what Life Mobility is doing is consolidating and getting a bigger footprint in the United States and going into raising awareness for this service and going into outfits like Lowe's, so big box stores, and showing people that, hey, now you actually have a way to get your loved one in and out of the house, in and out of bed, up and down the stairs.
So this is interesting, Israel. So I've had the opportunity to work inside of skilled nursing facilities and also currently working with Raya's Paradise. I've seen the lifts inside of Raya's Paradise. I've never seen them inside of any type of nursing facility or any other assisted living facility. So tell me how, what type of pieces of equipment would be beneficial inside of an assisted living facility or even an elderly person's home?
So let's start with a person's home. If you're elderly, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a piece of equipment like that. For example, my mom is 75. She doesn't need any kind of equipment besides maybe a grab bar, maybe something on the surface of the shower so it's not slippery. So prevention product.
Okay.
If someone has had a stroke and maybe they have difficulty walking up the stairs, maybe they're wheelchair bound, then there are products out there that can help. Some of the products would be caregiver assisted. Other products may be something that you can use on your own. So for example, when you go into a boarding care environment like Raya's Paradise, we've installed lifts in the residents' rooms about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And a lot of people that come through have never seen anything like that. So it opens up a whole new market for Raya's Paradise to be able to care for someone that normally they wouldn't, or they would need more staff, or it would reduce workman's comp. So, for example, a caregiver that maybe weighs 120 pounds can lift a 300-pound patient with a press of a button.
Yeah.
So overhead lifts are available, although in 19 years of me being in this industry, I haven't seen people requesting quotes into homes. It's into boarding care homes or into facilities. I was actually just in Kaiser in Los Angeles, and I saw their new hospital had overhead lifts. This is the first one that I saw.
Oh, wow.
So we do it in residential settings where, let's say you have someone who is wheelchair bound. So instead of spending money on two caregivers, now you can actually invest in an overhead lift. So the upfront cost would be a little more, but in the long run, you don't have to have somebody strong to lift that person in and out of bed.
So just for clarification, the overhead lift replaces what we call a Hoyer lift, correct?
Yes, it replaces. So you have a Hoyer lift. It's usually on the floor. They're very difficult to use, especially if you have carpets. or if you have padding, especially that's the worst because you can lift somebody out of bed, but now you have to actually physically pull this lift, and if there's furniture or anything in the way, it's very difficult.
Right. I will share that since being at Raya's Paradise and watching the staff use these lifts, the overhead lifts have been very beneficial. We have decreased the workers' comp injuries and also injuries to our residents. And I do have a quick story. We had a family that the daughter was looking for a location for rehab, and she didn't want to go into skilled nursing because most people don't want to go into skilled nursing facilities. And she came to Raya's Paradise and saw the actual lift that your company had installed in the hallway, and did not want to engage in any type of other rehab. And so she came. Her dad was a really bad stroke victim, and she moved her dad in, and he came in pretty much needing all the care that was possible. He was dead weight. Raya's Paradise staff started to work with him on a daily basis aside from the physical therapy, and 3 months later he walked out of Raya's Paradise. So
That like puts a tear in my eye. It's like so nice to hear that because when Michael was building that building, we went through and did the measurements for all the rooms, because the ideal way to do an overhead lift is to prep for it in framing phase, where you reinforce everything, and once the drywall is up, then we come in and we put the tracks in. But I told Michael, I said, this would be actually a really nice hallway, and we could put a really long gate system that, if you put the right sling on.
right.
So we went over there actually after the facility was built, and we were experimenting it. And actually, I haven't heard any feedback till now for the first time. So
Yes, that was definitely, thank you. That was, yeah, that was definitely it is continuing to be a great piece of equipment. And it's not only that, it's a great selling tool. So most families, when they compare, my loved one has, again, your stroke victims, or even, people suffering from the loss of mobility just because they're appropriately aging in place. They come to Raya's Paradise and they see that and they say, how often can my loved one use it? And the answer is as often as they can tolerate. So in reality, they're getting more physical therapy than they would get inside of a skilled nursing facility and or at home. So thank you. It has been a phenomenal piece of equipment. So tell me, Israel, are pieces of equipment like this paid for by insurance?
Actually, I want to add one other thing, Monica.
Okay.
Usually, if you didn't have that track system in the hallway, you would need one nurse in the front with the walker, another one in the back with the wheelchair, just in case the patient gets tired and needs to sit down.
That is correct. That is correct.
With an overhead lift that eliminates that second caregiver, maybe even the first caregiver, if somebody's just walking up and down the hallway, just with a little assistance or security. Unfortunately, overhead lifts are not reimbursed by insurance, just like a lot of other stuff like stair lifts. Not even grab bar installation. So people call in and they ask, my loved one is having difficulty and is it covered by insurance? And we say no, and usually they reply with, well, it should be. And I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, it's not. So it's something that's out of pocket.
Okay, I have heard that perhaps long-term care insurance company may or may not cover pieces of equipment. Is that correct?
So in 19 years of doing this, I came across one client who happens to be an insurance agent, and he had a policy. And unfortunately, he had a stroke, and we did a stair lift. We did a ramp. We did a lot of threshold ramps around the house. And we did a bathroom remodel, and his insurance picked up the whole tab. But like I said, that's one in 19 years.
So one thing for people to have knowledge of is if you have a long-term care insurance policy, probably what covers it is if your policy has what's called DME, which is durable medical equipment coverage. That's probably the piece that's going to cover that. But who knows? They'd have to explore that with their long-term care insurance, correct?
probably should know this, but I don't, and that is true. I would talk to a specialist. I would assume wouldn't cost that much more, but it's so great to have.
Yeah.
Most people underestimate what it costs to modify a home. If you had a hip replacement, you're usually up and walking right away. Mm-hmm. But some people who have strokes sometimes don't recover and are bound to a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. They need caregivers, they need equipment, they need modifications, and sometimes a wheelchair will not fit through a door, so you need a wider, maybe a door widening. Can't get over and into the tub, so you need to tear out the tub, replace the tub with a roll-in shower. So there's other expenses that most people don't think about. The first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is care, and that's the most expensive one. Right. Followed by equipment, followed by construction or modifications to the home. And that's where Lifeway Mobility will raise the awareness and bring it out there. So people understand that there is equipment like that. I'll give you an example. Most people that love taking a bath see a commercial on TV that shows a walk-in tub, and they're great.
Yes.
But what happens if you're renting an apartment, or maybe it's out of your budget? There's a product called a bath lift. If you go on a website like Amazon, you put in a bath lift, and for about $400, you can get somebody in and out of a bath, without the risk of falling or slipping.
Oh, wow.
So I think the future is exciting. I think that this is something new and something that hopefully more and more people know about. And I really appreciate being here today and having the opportunity to talk about this.
Thank you, Israel. We definitely appreciate the feedback. And before we end real quick here, can you tell me a little bit about the stairway chair that might be available to families, or how is that beneficial?
So you have stairway chair, stair lift. There's so many names for this device. What we call it is a stair lift. It's a lot of people, especially in cities like Los Angeles or in our Bay Area office, where stuff is being built vertically and no longer 2 stories. Now they're going 3 stories. Now, if you're building a new house and you can plan for an elevator, it's great. 35 to 40,000, you can get an elevator installed. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it might seem like a lot of money, but if you're building a new house, it's not that much. The other thing is, if you're building a new house, you can also build the hoistway, which is the most expensive part of a elevator. And if you're not going to put an elevator, use them as 2 individual closets. Later on, if you become disabled or something happens, the hoistway is ready and you can install an elevator. For those people that don't have the hoistway and it's out of their budget, you can put a stair lift in.
Okay.
So if you have a stair lift, a staircase that is straight up, you're looking at approximately $3,000 to $4,000 on a national level, more or less, depending if some cities required sales tax, some don't. Maybe in the Bay Area it's slightly more. But if you have a bend or a turn, then you need a curved stair lift, and those range between, I would say, $13,000 to $15,000. But one thing you need to understand is, if you're wheelchair bound, you need to transfer from the wheelchair to the stair lift, go up, and then you have another wheelchair upstairs. So there's a transfer that's involved.
Got it. I mean, I thank you for that explanation. I have been into many homes where I have seen the client or my potential resident upstairs and not a way of getting down. I even had a client who would climb the stairs backwards, going down on her knees because she didn't know how to get down. We introduced a stair lift. The daughter installed it, and it was great. And even, yes, you do need assistance with the caregiver, but it definitely helps for those families that have multi-story home and don't know how to get their loved one up and down the stairs because their living corridors are upstairs. So thank you for that explanation. And again, we know this is not covered by insurance, but exploring long-term care insurance is definitely a benefit, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much, Israel. I enjoyed our conversation today, and we hope to have you back soon.
Sounds good, Monica. Thanks for having me.